Soon, the wait will be over.
Rampage Jackson is the guy who knocked out Chuck Liddell like this.
I'm gonna make history tonight.
The most famous mixed martial artist in the world.
Rampage Jackson!
And now he's going up against probably the most beloved mixed martial artist in the world, Forrest Griffin.
Oh, you gotta love him. Forrest Griffin has pulled off the upset!
I believe I can beat Quinton.
This is my belt, and he's gonna have to beat the hell out of me to take it.
Forrest ain't gonna beat him. I'll retire if Forrest beats Rampage Jackson.
I am so freaking excited for this fight. It's like Christmas is coming. Christmas in July, baby.
Also on the card are two of the world's top middleweights. Power puncher Patrick Cote and Brazilian jiu-jitsu artist Ricardo Almeida.
That is some top-shelf Brazilian jiu-jitsu right there.
I'm able to knock everybody out in my weight class with one punch.
Cote trying to finish his fight.
Last guy who said that he could knock me out on the feet and beat me on the ground didn't even make it out of the first round.
UFC light heavyweight champion Rampage Jackson versus top contender Forrest Griffin. Middleweight slugging sensation Patrick Cote takes on jiu-jitsu black belt Ricardo Almeida. The countdown to UFC 86 starts now. For 6 weeks, the future opponents shared a gym, training their fighters under the same roof.
Forrest and Rampage, they both coached season 7 of The Ultimate Fighter.
Every day they would see each other, they knew that they're about to beat each other's ass. I mean, that built some tension.
I feel like, you know, kind of like seeing my opponents, like seeing the bride before the wedding. I don't like to see them, I don't like to talk to them, I don't like to know them.
Both funny, easygoing, happy-go-lucky guys until about midway through season 7.
I bet you our fight don't go to no decision. I bet you.
Never in a million years did I expect these two to get into it.
I bet my whole purse on it.
Quinton started, you know, talking, saying our fight wasn't going to go down like that. Of course, I got mad.
After he said that, Forrest went crazy.
What the f?
Goes back to his room, walks right through the door. Literally walks through the door.
Forrest is pissed.
I don't like to be made a fool of. And, you know, it's just, I get upset. I have temper tantrums.
What the f? Who did that, Rampage?
Me. He did.
Makes the fight a little more personal now with what happened on the show.
Forrest was a veteran of the show, having fought on season 1 of The Ultimate Fighter on Spike. His final fight launched his UFC career and changed the fortunes of the organization.
Forrest and Stephan Bonner come out and start putting on what I call the most significant fight in UFC history.
We have ourselves a fight! Wow!
Toe-to-toe, up and down for 3 rounds. The place is going crazy. Everybody in the arena is stomping their feet. We're all freaking out.
What a war! The winner!
The win earned Forrest a UFC contract. He won 3 of his next 4 fights.
Good uppercut!
His willingness to bang,
Forrest is no stranger to being cut and hurt in a fight.
making him one of the most popular fighters in the world.
Listen to the crowd reaction for Forrest Griffin.
I never said I was that good or that pretty, but baby, I can make it exciting.
This kid has a ton of heart, a ton of balls.
A year later,
Forrest is in trouble!
after a loss to Keith Jardine, the fans saw another side of Forrest Griffin.
Tell us what's going through your mind right now.
I mean, Keith came in, he did exactly what I wanted to do, and he knocked me the out. Let's go home.
To lose a fight like that after you've trained for 14 weeks, 17 weeks is very difficult and it's very emotional.
Broken.
Forrest is a really emotional guy. He puts his heart and soul into this. This is his life, you know?
If you're lucky, you'll find something in your life that's worth crying about.
Forrest bounced back with wins over Hector Ramirez and one of the top 205-pounders in the world, Shogun Rua.
It is over! Forrest Griffin has defeated Shogun!
It was an amazing, incredible performance by Forrest, and it finally got everybody to open their eyes and give Forrest Griffin the respect he deserved.
But I will fight anybody.
Now he's pushing himself to fight the best guy in the world, Rampage. He has the belt.
And the thing that makes this even more interesting is Shogun beat Quinton Jackson. Shogun beat Quinton Jackson, and Forrest Griffin beat Shogun.
Rampage's loss to Shogun in April of 2005 was his last defeat. Since then, he's knocked out superstar Chuck Liddell to capture the UFC light heavyweight title. And successfully defended it against Dan Henderson.
I'm the new face of MMA. I'm gonna be undisputed.
I don't see Rampage getting beat for a long time. I've been training fighters up here for over 20 years. It's something of seclusion, plus the air and the altitude, you know. We'd like to get that blood working for us. But I'm putting them through hell. Because Forrest, them are the kind of guys that'll beat you. The guys that are unpredictable, balls out all the time. The guys just goes for it. These are the dangerous kind of fighters. They really are.
I've moved out to Vegas, and I've been training with Forrest, and I'm pretty much near the point of death training with Forrest.
Go grab some back.
Forrest is one of the most amazing humans in the world. It's almost like his body doesn't really break down.
What's next, Norm?
As the fight lengthens, the Rampage-Forrest fight, I think the edge sort of goes to Forrest.
Will Forrest be in better shape? Probably for a track meet. But when it comes to an MMA fight, you can only run so far in the cage.
Train hard. Train real hard for us. Train all day. We're gonna need it.
Rampage has lost only 3 fights in the past 7 years, but Forrest's camp thinks they found a weakness.
I think Rampage has shown some trouble from the clinch. Forrest's clinch and his body work, because of his length with his arms, gives him the ability to throw knees and elbows and do a lot of really good clinch work.
That's something he's going to be susceptible to just because, you know, he's a lot closer to my knees than I am to his.
You know how many years ago that was? Rampage has changed from then. We work on all them weaknesses constantly.
You do not want to be in the clinch with Quinton. You don't want to be on the ground with Quinton. You don't want to be in the cage with Quinton Rampage Jackson, quite honestly.
This ain't what you want.
To prepare for Rampage's punching power, Forrest has been working with a new boxing coach.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right to the right. Pop it. There you go. Pop, pop.
Throw it and then move.
The whole theme of this camp, since we started it, is don't be where you just were. Here you go. Now let's just tighten it up. Punching and moving, moving and punching. Don't be where you just were.
I've accepted that I'm not a power puncher and that I do not need to sit in the pocket and trade with people.
Yeah, that's nice.
Because with Quinton, I'm just not going to win that.
Something Forrest and I talk about is one mistake. You'll end up on the ground looking at the lights, you know, thinking, what the did I do wrong? We can't make one mistake.
Being the underdog is always better. I always want to be the underdog.
He knows he's never fought anybody that hits harder than me. Forrest knows deep down in his mind that he's supposed to lose, and he's going to come to that fight and lose.
Coming up, Rampage in Japan.
Pride marketed me as a crazy homeless guy.
Quinton loved Japan. He loves Asian women. Ooh-wee.
I got them wrapped around my finger, you know what I'm saying?
Quinton Jackson earned his nickname when he was just a kid, making trouble in Memphis, Tennessee.
Quinton got the name Rampage from a cousin of ours because of his temper. Sometimes Quinton's temper, he just really lets go. He really cuts loose.
He just wasn't doing anything right. Like if you walk by a puddle of water, you said, Quinton, don't step in the water. Well, Quinton is going to step in the water.
I probably was an active kid, you know. I like to have fun.
Once Quinton had done something, and I told him I was going to whoop him. And he told me, he said, Mama, if you whoop me, you whooping God. I told him I was going to tear God up.
And she have a switch, a flip-flop, a hanger, a rack. You know what I'm saying? Anything she get her hand, her hand across your face, pop you in the mouth. My mama real country, you know what I'm saying? She didn't play.
Quinton would get into a fight at school every day. I would beg him not to fight. I would ask him, I said, Quinton, just walk away. That's all you have to do is just walk away. No, Mama, no, no. So it nothing I could do about it.
I've been in a lot of fights, over 500 street fights from a kid on up. I only lost like 2 or 3 all those fights. If people don't believe me, they can go to my neighborhood in Memphis and ask. They'll tell you.
He used to get into fights a lot because guys used to try to bully me around because I was like kind of small, and then he'd go ask him, you know, why you picking on my little brother?
What I would do, I would go beat up the guys for beating him up, then I had to beat up my little brother for making me beat up the guys that beat him up. So it was a circle of ass beating going around.
I didn't know what he would turn out to be, because I couldn't see any profession that he could go into. He hated school.
I started hanging around street guys, you know what I'm saying? They took care of me and showed me the ways of the streets and stuff like that. I was a street punk. One of my stepdad's best friend, you know, he's kind of like my uncle. He pulled me up to the side and he said, hey, you know what they do to guys in prison? Like what, feed them 3 times a day, you know, lock them up in the cell? He said, nah, man, they rape them. I said, man, ain't nobody raping me. He said, yeah, I know you tough. You make it handle like 1 or 2 guys, but you ain't finna handle like 4, 5 big guys that's been in prison for life. Man, for real, they rape people in prison. I just prayed for a change then. You know, my mom married to my stepdad, and they got a better house and a better neighborhood, went to a better school.
With them going to a new school, he wanted to make a fresh start. He wanted to portray himself as being a good boy instead of a bad boy.
No one knew who I was. They didn't know anything about my background, so I went there to act like a square.
Having failed 2 grades in elementary school, Rampage was 17 when he entered Raleigh Egypt High, a school with a prominent wrestling program.
Quinton came one Monday night. He came to our wrestling. When you looked at him, you just kind of laughed because he had a jerry curl, and he was real deep voice, and he's really flamboyant. He said, I want to do this thing called wrestling. He never stopped coming after that.
I was just really having fun, really. You know, and I fell in love with the sport.
Everything was different. He got better then. I guess he found something he loved to do. He became a better child after that.
As a senior, Rampage placed 6th in the Tennessee State Finals. After graduation, he was introduced to mixed martial arts.
Quinton would have fights at this place on Beale Street called the New Days that had amateur fights. He was a wrestler / street fighter, pretty much. He picked him up and body slam. He loved the body slam.
His strength is just uncanny. He could pick up anything. We're going to go down to New Daisy and watch him. So we get down there. His opponent sees Quinton in the shadows when they weigh in and runs out of the place and never fights him.
I really liked that type of fight. I didn't think that I would make any money or do anything. I just thought, you know, get me back out my house.
In 2000, Rampage moved to California, where he won 10 of his first 11 professional fights. Then, pride came calling.
They wanted somebody that wasn't that good, that looked mean and looked tough. They could put on a good show.
Quinton loves Japan. He loves Asian women. Ooh-wee. I like, you don't like a black girl? No, I don't care for black women. I love Asian women.
Over in Pride, he was really a renegade. because that's what they want him to be.
Pride marketed me as a homeless guy, crazy homeless guy. At first they would tell me I can't smile, that people know laughing out in public.
Rampage took Japan by storm, taking out some of the sport's biggest names, Murilo Bustamante, Ricardo Arona, even Chuck Liddell.
I knew that going in that Chuck couldn't beat me because of my style of fight. Chuck is a great fighter, but I think what I bring to the table, I just knew Chuck couldn't beat me.
4 years later, Rampage and Chuck met again. It was Rampage's second fight in the UFC. Chuck Liddell was the light heavyweight champ.
And I trained my butt off. I was like, you know, Chuck is the man now. He won champion when I fought him. Now, I really looked up to Chuck.
Liddell is in disbelief. Rampage is the light heavyweight champion.
4 months later, Rampage defeated Pride 205-pound champion Dan Henderson, unifying the UFC and Pride titles.
I never knew he would beat up my fist with his face.
The troublemaker from Tennessee is now a full-blown star.
He defied the odds in 7 months. He won 2 belts that people dream of winning 1. We did it in 7 freaking months.
He's a celebrity now. He got the key to the city last year.
I like driving nice cars. I like wearing nice clothes. I want a nice house. That's why I train so hard.
The world's gonna know who Rampage Jackson is, believe me. Next year's gonna be a bigger year.
Up next, the wacky world of Forrest Griffin.
Didn't have my helmet on, just started headbutting people.
Forrest has a tremendous threshold for pain.
Forrest Griffin has been beating the odds since the day he was born.
I was born with like an immune deficiency. The doctor said, yeah, you know, it's not gonna be life-threatening or anything, but he might be a little undersized and kind of, you know, scrawny his whole life.
Good uppercut. That's it. Forrest Griffin wins by knockout.
Guess who's wrong? I really had ADHD when I was a kid. I bought a Nintendo and I just couldn't even play it. I was just like, sucks. So I'm gonna go do something. So, you know, because of that, I became real physical.
Kids would come over to the house and they'd be wrestling in the front yard. And he would just keep going and wrestle child after child after child.
He was very hyper. His mom used to make him run around the outside of the house 4 or 5 times before he'd come in to do his homework because he couldn't sit still.
But he loved it so much that we'd have to do it a long time before he got tired.
Frankie Dickinson was kind of a friend of mine. We were playing basketball, and something happened. He kind of grabbed me, threw me on the ground, and started punching me like this.
Frankie was throwing uppercuts, and Forrest was just holding on to him, laughing his head off. It was the worst beating I've ever seen someone take.
Worse than any fight you've ever seen me in. Yeah, he shut both my eyes, put knots all over me. It was pretty bad.
You couldn't recognize him.
That was really good old days.
Sports were a natural outlet for Forrest's hyperactivity, but even on the field of play, he was a menace.
He's broken my nose twice playing basketball. Doesn't know how to go half speed. In middle school, he always wanted to palm a basketball, but at that point he couldn't. So he would cut the webbing in between his fingers, you know, and try to stretch it out more so he could palm a basketball.
I was the guy that would dive on the concrete to catch the touchdown when we play, you know, football in the street.
It was a game of the week his senior year between the 2 rival teams in the area.
I sacked the quarterback on a 4th and 4 and got a little excited about it.
Took his helmet off and was holding it in one hand, and other guys were coming up to congratulate him. And some other guys still had their helmets on, and Forrest grabbed him by the face mask and started headbutting him.
Next day, seriously, I woke up with like a half a softball on my head.
Forrest exhibits a lot of bizarre behavior, definitely.
I was kind of a madman.
While attending the University of Georgia, Forrest entered the police academy.
I kind of always wanted to be in law enforcement, and it was a lot of car accident reports. There'd be crime sometimes, and you would show up just in time to get yelled at by the person that was the victim of the crime.
At the academy, Forrest got his first taste of martial arts.
About 2 years before he came, the police academy had instituted a ground fighting program designed for police officers.
He started taking self-defense classes when he was going to the police academy, and he liked some of the stuff he learned.
I encouraged him to seek out anybody that was trained in jiu-jitsu, ground fighting training.
There were these two brothers at the Ramsey Center. They were always doing weird stuff in one of the rooms.
We were doing a bunch of different things. We were stick fighting and knife fighting and doing some silliness.
Forrest joined immediately.
We'd do like boxing one night, jiu-jitsu the next night, and the next night they would stick fight. And I was like, I carry a gun, so stick fighting really don't behoove me. I don't really care to learn how to disarm people with a knife. You know, I'll just shoot them and pick it up later. But that jiu-jitsu stuff, man, that's pretty cool.
Training with Forrest was sometimes hellish, especially in the beginning when he wasn't as skilled and technical and was just going more on just size and strength and speed and power.
He tore our Thai coach's Achilles. He broke Rory's elbow. I had a bunch of stitches. My wife was just like, don't train with Forrest anymore.
Forrest won a few amateur fights around Athens, Georgia. His first pro fight was against 43-year-old UFC legend Dan Severn.
He immediately takes me down, and he's beating the crap out of me. He was way ahead of everything I tried, so I just started insulting him. Dude, you look like fat Freddie Mercury. Dude, you look way thinner on TV. Dude, you're like Tom Selleck's fat older brother.
Forrest won 9 of his next 10 fights, including 1 knockout after suffering a broken arm.
Forrest still managed to knock the guy out with his other good hand.
Forrest has a tremendous threshold for pain.
Then came the offer that would change his life and the fortunes of the UFC.
It's the best thing that's ever happened to him.
6-figure contract on the line.
I put so much pressure on myself. Kind of like, this is the end-all, be-all, and I had to do this or else.
Forrest's victory over Bonner launched an unforeseen run through the upper echelon of the light heavyweight division.
I ain't that great, but I will fight anybody.
He's like the closest thing the UFC has to a Rocky Balboa type story. You got this average guy that seemingly is fighting beyond what his talent should be. Now with all the training he's done and the people he's worked with and the competition he's faced, his talent levels matched up to his heart and his endurance.
At UFC 86, the man who nearly quit the sport just 3 years ago takes a shot at Rampage Jackson's coveted title.
When I first got into the UFC, I didn't dare dream of it, you know? Being the champ almost seemed a little arrogant to say it. It's something I've never really liked to say out loud, you know? But something I've always wanted deep inside.
Coming up, who will prevail? The boxer or the black belt?
My goal was to take him down and submit him.
I don't care if he trained with Gracie or the Pope.
Before Quinton Jackson and Forrest Griffin settled their differences, 2 dangerous middleweights with contrasting styles will lock horns.
Patrick Cote is coming off 2 huge wins.
Landed that one straight down the pipe. Good up. Patrick Cote's got it. Fingers and Travis is down. Cote trying to finish. That's a wrap. It is Patrick Cote.
A win over Ricardo Almeida puts him right into the title picture. Almeida just came off a very impressive win.
He's got a guillotine right there. Will this fight end quickly? Whoa. That's it. A triumphant return to the victor.
And a win over Cote is the same thing for him, puts him right in the title picture. Stylistically, this is a great fight. Cote loves to stand up, Almeida loves to go to the ground and submit, and we'll find out which guy's going to impose his will.
I like knocking people out, for sure.
And, whoa, took a right hand, he's in trouble.
I'm going to take him down and take the fight where I like to take it.
Almeida is a black belt in jiu-jitsu under the famed Renzo Gracie, but that doesn't concern Cote.
I don't care if he trained with Gracie or the Pope.
I think it was Carlson Gracie that said, you know, you get into the ring as a black belt, 1 punch, and you're a brown belt.
One more punch in your purple belt.
Don't be surprised if you see Patrick taking down Almeida. This is not jiu-jitsu, man. This is MMA.
I actually would beg for him to get down on the ground with Ricardo because I think that it would be exactly what we couldn't hope for more.
Cote is a boxer, trained in the Canadian Army.
Patrick needs one punch. That's all he needs.
Almeida's ready to show off his improved stand-up skills.
If I had to put him in there with like any other professional boxer that just boxed, like he could hold his own.
If you want to stand, if you want to try to take me on his feet, go ahead, let's go. I'm able to knock everybody out in my weight class with one punch. I ain't scared of anybody in my weight class.
Last guy who said that he could knock me out on the feet didn't even make it out of the first round.
That is some top-shelf Brazilian jiu-jitsu right there.
Come July 5th, let's see what he can do.
At the end, I'll be a winner for sure.
Born in tiny Rimouski, Quebec, Patrick Cote joined the Canadian Army when he turned 18.
I went to Bosnia for 6 months in 2001. We went there to help the country, to rebuild the country. I saw a couple hard things when I was in Bosnia. I was already strong mentally, but for sure I'm stronger because I was in the Army.
It was in the Army that Patrick learned how to box. When he completed his service time, he decided to pursue a career in mixed martial arts.
I didn't want to just live my life like everybody else. I wanted to do something special. I won my first 5 fights in the TKO. I became the Canadian light heavyweight champion.
In October of 2004, Patrick was invited to fight on the undercard of the Tito Ortiz-Guy Metzger matchup. But 4 days before the fight, Metzger got injured, and Patrick stepped up to take on the former light heavyweight champ.
I was the main event against the guy who were in my screensaver on my computer.
He was 185, he moved up to 205 to take on Tito.
I went there, just swing for the fence, that's it.
Tito looking for a little control. Tito stumbled. Caught a right.
I did a good job. I received maybe 200 elbows in my face, but at the end I was still on my feet and I lose by a decision. Yeah, I changed my screensaver after this fight, you know. I put the picture when I dropped him, so that was nice.
The UFC was impressed enough to invite Patrick back to UFC 52. But Patrick was submitted by Joe Dirksen.
Joe Dirksen wins by rear naked choke.
4 months later, he lost a split decision to Chris Lieben.
Oh, he caught him with the left there. And backpedaling is Patrick Cote.
He was undefeated in Canada and winless in the U.S.
The level of the fighters, like, it's a big difference.
Patrick's manager, certain that his fighter could still compete in the UFC, arranged a spot for him on Season 4 of The Ultimate Fighter, The Comeback. Patrick advanced to the middleweight finals, but was quickly submitted by Travis Lutter.
It is all over! Travis Lutter is the Ultimate Fighter! Very disappointing performance for Patrick Cote.
It was a really, really hard loss for me, you know. I came back home, you know, I was really, really disappointed. I was really down. You know, I bought a PS2 and 40 bottles of beer, and for 4 days I was in my house and just playing PlayStation.
In February of 2007, the UFC gave Patrick one final shot to prove that he belonged.
The Scott Smith fight, I had my back against the wall with the UFC. And it was a really, really important fight for me.
The winner by unanimous decision, Patrick Cote.
It was just a relief, you know. I was like, oh, finally.
He needed that win.
Impressive knockouts of the dangerous Kendall Grove and Drew McFedries earned Patrick a shot at Ricardo Almeida.
I'm very lucky to have the second chance to prove myself again and maybe to have a title fight after that. I'm in a good streak right now, and my focus is to continue to win and to have the belt around my waist.
Up ahead, after 4 years away, the big dog returns to the octagon.
People always ask, you know, Ricardo, do you think you still have what it takes to compete with the young guys coming up? I'm here to find out.
I love the correlation between surfing and MMA. You can't tame the ocean. The ocean is always changing, the wind's different, the bottom of the ocean is different, you need to surf the wave a little bit different. So when I fight, I try to do the same thing. You fight an opponent that's got good striking, and you find someone else who has really good takedowns. You try to go around what my opponent's doing and use what he's doing to my advantage. That's the jiu-jitsu approach to fighting. I started surfing as soon as I could walk. The moment I could stand, my father put me on a board. I grew up just in the water, sailing, scuba diving, spearfishing, water skiing. And I met Master Renzo Gracie when I first walked onto Gracie Barra. I was 15 years old. To all of us that started jiu-jitsu at that time, like he was our hero. There was no Iron Man, no Superman, it was Renzo Gracie. I moved here to help Master Renzo at a school he was opening. I wanted to dedicate my whole life to jiu-jitsu, and I realized that the only way I was going to be able to do that is if I was a teacher. Here? Perfect, right there, you got your hat.
3 years later, at the urging of his students, the teacher became a fighter.
Fought in front of 20,000 people my very first professional fight, and it was definitely a rush. I did win, you know, it was an awesome performance. It's definitely inspired me to follow on a career.
But Ricardo lost 2 of his first 4 matches in the UFC. In late 2002, he decided to fight exclusively in Japan.
I was just having a tough time dealing with the outside of the ring part, doing interviews, and people, oh, they want tickets, and they want this, and they want that. Like, I really had a tough time dealing with that. So I decided to move to fight in Japan, where, like, you just get on a plane and you go out there yourself in a couple cornermen, and no one really bothers you. And ever since that loss in the UFC, I never lost again.
There was a period of time when the best talent in the world was in Japan, and Ricardo was over there dominating.
A 2003 victory over Nathan Marquardt gave Ricardo the Pancrase Middleweight Championship.
Threw him up on my shoulders, we ran around the ring, and it was just a really, really fantastic experience.
Ricardo earned 1 more victory in 2004, and then abruptly retired.
I was undefeated in Japan, I beat some of the top middleweights, but that's not what life is about. I wanted to get other aspects of my life together. I had to take a step back from fighting, focus on my family, focus on my jiu-jitsu school, and just focus on the things that are going to be here after fighting is done. We were able to grow the school onto one of the biggest jiu-jitsu schools in the world. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
It's not just that he's teaching technique, he's teaching life skills to these guys.
He has a lot of passion in what he does, and it shines through in every class, every lesson.
The first 2 guard passes that we always learn. Slight step back, slight step forward. So that we're pinning that one leg just between our knees. It's just great to be able to share with other people what I have gotten from jiu-jitsu. You know, like without jiu-jitsu in my life, I would be nothing. Thank you guys. Great class. Do you like jiu-jitsu? Yeah? Are you gonna be a black belt one day? Yeah? To have a family has given a meaning to my life that I never thought I could have. You know, like, it's given me a sense of responsibility. My children depend on me for instruction so they could better deal with the world out there.
For 4 years, Ricardo built his schools and his family. 2 daughters and a son, Renzo, named after his mentor.
Hey, Renzo, do you want to go surfing with me? Yeah. All right.
Then, one day, the itch returned.
I was with my younger brother, Andre, and I was telling him that I was thinking about coming back and fighting, or maybe not, and he's like, you know, Ricardo, you're 30 years old. This is the time for you to work. It really made me think about getting back to training and getting back to competing full-time. There's this new generation of guys coming up. They're gonna take the sport to a whole new level. Like, I cannot not be a part of it.
The UFC, excited for his return, put him on the undercard of UFC 81. Ricardo began training for a return to the octagon. Then he and his wife received troubling news.
A couple weeks before my fight in February, my son, Renzo, was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. It's definitely something that's tough to deal with. I thought about just calling Dana and Joe Silva and being like, you know, I can't fight. I shouldn't be here. I spoke to my father, and he was like, you know, Ricardo, I think it's important for your son to see you working hard, to see you out there fighting. And it spoke to me, and I decided that I was going to fight. I want him to see me sweating and bleeding a little bit so that he understands that he needs to go through his therapy, he needs to go through his tough times, and everything's going to be okay at the end.
In February, in his first fight in nearly 4 years, Ricardo submitted the previously undefeated Rob Yunt 1 minute into the first round.
And he's got a guillotine right there. Can he finish it here? But he's got one arm in. Will this fight end quickly? Oh, that's it. It is all over. That is some top-shelf Brazilian jiu-jitsu right there.
People always ask, you know, Ricardo, do you think you still have what it takes to compete with the young guys coming up? I'm here to find out. That's what I'm here for.
Coming up, the final word on Rampage and Forrest.
I believe Rampage is going to push a little too hard to make something exciting happen.
Will something happen spectacular? Damn right it will. He's going to knock his ass out.
UFC 86, the reality show rivalry between Forrest Griffin and Rampage Jackson gets real.
Rampage Jackson, the champion of the world, is too much for this kid right now. He's just too much.
There's nothing Rampage can throw at Forrest that he hasn't seen.
The only way that Quinton would be able to beat him is to take him down and maybe elbow him and get lucky, get a cut.
Forrest is going to be one of them stiff knocks out. And they still with their eyes open, but they don't know what's going on.
Liddell is in disbelief.
But Forrest's camp thinks his legendary stamina
Forrest is one of those guys that just doesn't get tired.
will outlast Rampage's power.
Forrest is going to wear him out. I think the later rounds are going to be Forrest's rounds.
He's going to be able to push the pace and keep up a pace that I don't really think Rampage is going to be prepared for.
I don't think that Forrest has better cardio. Forrest has never been in a 5-round fight, especially on that scale. Definitely not with Quinton standing in front of him. Quinton's going to be in great shape.
I see Rampage getting finished with a submission or from exhaustion and ground and pounded.
Never. Never is going to happen. I know Tim. I like Tim. Sorry, Tim. That ain't going to happen, baby.
If that's the game plan, they're in for a very short night, unfortunately. Nobody's, been able to do that to Quinton so far, and I don't see Forrest being able to do that just yet.
I believe Rampage is going to push a little too hard to make something exciting happen, and I think that could definitely be his downfall.
Rampage always fights with spectacular fashion. That's just how he fights. That's why everybody loves to see him. So will something happen spectacular? Damn right it will. He's going to knock his ass out.
Each fighter hopes to catch the other off guard.
Eventually, Rampage is going to get a little desperate, reach, and get caught with something. I think we can catch him inside of him reaching.
That's a nice quote, but I've never seen Rampage desperate to get inside. Rampage, he's going to hit him, and he's going to hit him freaking hard. And I don't know that Forrest really can stand up to that.
I'm a tenacious guy. I'm going to stay in there 25 minutes. Prepared to go for it,
What a performance by Forrest Griffin!
Forrest ain't going to beat him. You know what? I'll say this on record. I'll retire if Forrest beats Rampage Jackson.
Hell, that'd make Forrest in more trouble. Because that's the last thing I want to do is want my trainer to retire.
I believe I can beat Quinton.
This is my belt, and he's going to have to beat the hell out of me to take it.